has got the facts for you. EX the storyteller, bringing the spark. No one does it better. EX, you've heard the rest, but she's the best. Yeah, she's the best. Oh, from ancient tales to modern schemes, unraveling truths and chasing dreams.
Oh, take the invite, Afro. So Bookie says, good, we need an echo chamber when focusing on us. So I'm waiting for my co-host. She hasn't gotten here yet, but I did do an outline for today, just giving a brief history of what the North or what life could have been like for the North, right? So Black Americans are documented as being in the North, specifically New York, since like 1640. But what I noticed is that the South didn't migrate up in mass numbers until like, I'm gonna say like 1919, 1920, around that time. At the same time, the Latinos were migrating here or given their citizenship. And also the Caribbean has started, hey Melrose, has started coming. To me, the South had a plus, right? Because they had us. So I just wanted to kind of talk about what life was like as they migrated up here, what Black New Yorkers were already doing. And when I say Black, I mean us. And Bookie knows a lot about that too. So when I was looking at the resources, they were, they use that term African American, but they were kind of focusing mostly on like the hardship because the North did have Jim Crow North here, while it wasn't as I'm gonna say as expansive as it was in the South. We were impacted by it. Oh, Bookie is here. Come up. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. And to find out what the nightlife was like, right? Because one of my biggest gripes is we had to be doing music. We are musical people. You leave us in a room with just a chair and a pencil, we gonna make a beat, right? Even if we don't have those, we're gonna do something like the human beatbox and stuff like that. So I just don't want the North to be erased, but the North's history, especially New York, to me, is kind of hidden. And that's where Bookie comes in, because she's an Aquarius that likes to read a lot of books too. So, hi Bookie. And she's on teacup. Hey Afro.
Hey.
How you doing?
Fine. Thank you to everybody who showed up. So, also, I got a cool vibe check for y'all, right? So, the prompt, it has symbolism that will reference the North, the South, the Midwest, and the West Coast. And I want to see who gets the symbolism correct. If you look at those pictures, but we could wait for that. Hi, Bookie.
Hey.
Hey. So, how do you want to start this? Because I have my notes.
Well, it's your live. You asked me to come join, and whatever you want to do, we can do.
Okay. All right. So I want to express what ethnocide is, right? Because we call it erasure, but erasure has a technical term. So ethnocide is the more proper term to identify what we foundational Black Americans or those of the lineage who could identify as FBI but don't. So the legal definition is the destruction of a people's cultural identity, often by denying them the right to their own culture and language. It is a form of massive human rights violation that can include actions like forced assimilation, dispossession of land, or propaganda aimed at undermining a group's identity. Unlike G-side, which targets the physical examination of a group, ethnocide specifically aims to destroy its culture. If we break down ethnocide even further to shed light on its meaning, we have cultural destruction, which like what we're going through. Let's take New York. When we say that's our vernacular, hip hop is what we created, and they say, "Oh no, that's just New York culture. Oh no, that's just street culture." So they're denying us our right or the acknowledgement of our culture, right? Forced assimilation we could see happening in Chicago when they're dumping the immigrants into places and taking resources from us to give to accommodate them. That also happened in New York when they was giving them all the benefits, and then people whose rent was in arrears, they were denying them assistance. While we see, the Latinos with the receipts of $10,000 here, 5,000 of food stamps there. So forced assimilation is harmful to us. So is immigration. Violations of rights. The term describes a violation of the fundamental human rights of an ethnic group, particularly their right to cultural identity, which Pan African does, right? We can see that with the African American Day Parade. We go there for the meeting. We ask them to be more inclusive of foundational Black Americans. Also, maybe the name needs an upgrade, but they're so stuck on African American. One Black American lady, she sounded like an elder, even if she didn't look like one, because we age gracefully. She said that she heard other people's music being played over Black Americans. Can they play more of our music? They went to telling us how West Indians was Black, and they didn't see anything wrong with playing West Indian music at our parade. So I think to fight ethnocide is what we're doing today, what Afro does on his platform and numerous other content creators on this app and even on Twitter, is telling the accurate history of our people, actively coming about combating the narratives that the Black immigrants say, and also fighting against one flat Blackness. So I think that it's important to know that the North had a culture before the South migrated up, but when the South migrated up, it meshed beautifully together to be what we see the culture of New York today. And I'm asking everybody. I don't care if you have family that lives here. If me, Shavu, or I hate to bring them up, but even Dr. Nojam, when we are telling you exactly how it is, what we experience in New York, I don't understand the pushback to it just because you have family that lives here. I think they're not tapped in. They don't see the work that our reparationists are doing. But I don't want to make this a back and forth thing. So what do y'all think about that, guys? The things that we're going through as far as erasure and combating it by telling accurate Black American history.
I think that it's a long time coming. This is something that's been going on for generations. It's something, especially now. Now it could be because we have TikTok and we have social media platforms, so we're seeing it more. But it's something, especially now, where everybody is like really pushing as hard as they can with this ethnocide. They're pushing that as hard as they can, like to a degree where either earlier this year we had to clear up some stuff about Juneteenth. Now, this is how bad the ethnocide has gotten because a few years ago that was not an issue. That was not a problem. Um, or at least it wasn't a big problem. It wasn't a problem worth discussing because barely anybody tried to do it. Now certain things that weren't a problem for us a few years ago are now a problem. Now we have to establish what Juneteenth is. Then we have to establish what Essence Fest is. Then we have to try to delineate and gatekeep the black or African American quote unquote parade in New York. So this is definitely a big push, a big agenda that they're pushing for. I mean, and they're throwing everything at the kitchen in the kitchen sink to do this. So what we're doing here is the antidote to it, and is very necessary for us to keep doing that, for us to keep doing this, because it gives the people the psychological armor in order for them not to be brainwashed and colonized mentally into believing that this is something that should be accepted. Because the reason why they're not able to do this is because the masses are really rejecting that. The reason why Essence failed is because the masses are rejecting it. So as long as we keep the information going, the masses will keep on rejecting
So I saw on Twitter today a tweet that said 60% of Black New Yorkers have a Caribbean parent, grandparent, or great grandparent. I don't know what people be thinking, but I don't know if this is the time, especially when we're fighting for reparations, to really start putting stats like that out. But since it's out there, New York is also a port state, right? Which means a lot of people bring up I call it the intra-America slave trade. Some people call it the triangular slave trade. That's where the ancestors were taking from the United States of America area to the Caribbean, or from the Caribbean to here. So when you mention stuff like that, then I think that it's necessary to bring that history up. Then I'm on a panel, and somebody who everybody loves, I'm up there trying to help her out. Well, I figured I was helping her out. And then she's like, yeah, what, and the person we're talking to was said they're a Black American from New York. And she said, well, yeah, it makes sense that you would say that, because in New York, everybody's sleeping with each other. They don't see themselves as a separate ethnic group from the Caribbean and stuff like that. And everybody, and I'm like, wait a minute, respectfully. That's not necessarily the case. We're very segregated here. Growing up in the 90s, being a teen in the 90s, Jamaicans had their own club. They had their own restaurants. They were not selling our food. So if you go to a certain section in the Bronx, right, that's where I used to party at, then you know that you're going to a Jamaican club. If you go into Harlem, let's say the Tunnel and stuff like that, then you know that you're going to a primarily Black American club. So, well, I got family that lived there and stuff. Okay, but I'm telling you, and a man had just said, BX, I don't talk about New York when you, Shavu, and Dr. No Jobs are around. I let y'all do that. And I think respectfully that should be the case. Because sometimes family gets it wrong. They might be in a gentrified borough of New York, or a gentrified area of New York, and so they don't see things through our lens, right? Because we also have Pan-Africanism. We also have people that will date and intermarry and lose part of their culture. When Black men was bringing that up on this app to me, and I'm the one that be like, my kids are bi-ethnic, and I find that a lot of well, not a lot, a couple of Black American women do have bi-ethnic children, but they don't necessarily say it unless BX is on the panel talking about her children for full transparency. Because I think it's important to be honest when it comes to that, right? So, I don't know. I just felt railroaded, and my intentions was good. So I think I'm going to have to start minding my business a little more so my sensitive feelings don't be hurt. Wait, babe, can you tell me who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, I'm way beyond the fifth. I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Are you Black American? I do see the American flag.
Yeah, it's just a little design.
Okay. You descend from U.S. chattel slavery era?
Yeah, I got ancestors that go that far.
Okay. All right. In the United States of America, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody's doing this American thing. Okay. So today we're just shining a light on Black American history. I am a New Yorker with Southern roots, but I also have an indigenous branch in New York and New Jersey. And I just kind of want to tell what life was like before the South migrated up, when they migrated up, what they saw. And I also want to bring in the Midwest or regions. It's Black American history. So go ahead, Bookie. Would you like to give your answer as to ethnocide and how we combat it? And what do you think about everything that's going on in the North, specifically New York? Because I know you know New York history, like you know Philly.
Yeah, one way we could combat it, but I don't think that it will, like, I don't want to put that in the universe and say it wouldn't happen, but when you, like I said this before, our culture, Black American culture and heritage is actually connected because of the fact that we are the only Black people who was living alongside our oppressors, right? So with that happening, we had to cling on to each other. So when you have people who community and culture and heritage is based off of each other and holding on to each other, it's going to be hard to have them say you have to separate from people who look like you and who you once welcomed, because you still have so many Black Americans who feel like that quote unquote we are Black, even though I don't feel that way. Yeah, we are racially Black, but we are not Black. And you have so many people who's like, yeah, they ignorant, but we can love them through it. And it's like, no, we can't. We gotta let that Pan-Africanness go, because I've seen so many videos on here, and it's a man who I seen a video who really spoke to it. He was talking about how he said that he feels like they felt like Black Americans was too comfortable. So you had people of color and the children of immigrants who are allowed to vote in this country felt they voted the way they did, like with the Green Party and Jill Stein. And even though the crazy ness that she was up against, basically to try to make us uncomfortable. And the thing is, a group of people who literally has been working since the inception of this country, we deserve at least a generation to rest. We only had our rights for 60 years that we have. And to completely come here and be used as a pawn against us and know it, and a lot of them know it. And I'm tired of people gaslighting us and acting like they don't know, because they do know. And this conversation is always, running its course about how we constantly have to tell them, you a Negro. Well, you're not a Negro, but I can't say the N-word. But they see you as that. And for you to keep constantly trying to align yourself with whiteness is not going to benefit any Black person in this country. And that's something we often go through. And it's unfortunate. And it was the intra-lineage issues. Are we talking about how to combat the issues that we have within our community? Or are you talking about the lineage of some Black Americans having, one Caribbean ancestor or something like that?
No, I'm talking about that's a part of it, right? Let's call it a subgroup. But I'm talking about the issues that we have. What we're seeing on the app now is that maybe I'm gonna say about a month ago, us and the American Indians were getting along fine. Now, did we have the ones who told us don't call ourselves Black? Yeah, but I blocked them. But now it's affecting even the ones that we thought we had allyship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I
So
think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I kind of want to touch on everything. I want to touch on our similarities. I want to touch on our culture. And whoever joins up, if you're from the West Coast, the Midwest, whatever, come tell us what life was like. What you know about the history of your area, your demographic. I think that we got to bring all our history out to the forefront and then address the issues. For me personally, I think between the North and the South is a lot of industry politics, right? Everybody treats New York like they're the capital of the North, and that we just the ones that gave away the culture, but they don't understand that we face violence from other groups here. That everybody who says we're so unified may have another agenda or may have been dating other people or have friends and don't know or understand how to stand on their own.
I agree with you with that about people, because the reputation of New York in itself, right? When you look at the reputation of New York, it's like big city bright lights. And it has this history that people cling to, Broadway and all these things. And, that's where a lot of our elders and ancestors went to make history. You had the Cotton Club, you had Harlem, you know what I mean? Even though Island Locke came from Philly and wrote the New Negro, and he brought Philly artists and Chicago artists with him to Harlem to to basically be the root of the Harlem Renaissance, with all these black artists from the South. And you had, of course, from Florida, you had the great Zora Neale Hurston, and then you had jazz players like Jelly Roll Morton. They came up to Harlem, all these great things. And New York got that reputation because black folks during the Great Migration was like, the big cities that you need to be in is like, whether it was Pittsburgh with a lot of the Negro League baseball teams was going to Pittsburgh, and then Philly, and in New York. And you have all these, and then Chicago being one of the main places of the Harlem Renaissance, and then Detroit. You have all these great places, and New York basically being one of those meeting grounds for all that. And so when you have something that is very culturally significant, like, even though we have 100 music genres, hip hop was the only one that was really start, all our genres was started by like young kids and the youth in a way, but it was started by the children. And even our elders was like, they recognized like, yeah, those kids, they just doing what Cab Calloway and them been doing, okay. But it was like, so they shunned it like, it's gonna be a fad, but this is something that the kids actually created. Like, they really wanted to be heard. They didn't want to do doo-wop, and they didn't want to do that. They wanted to do poetry in a different way, and because at one point hip hop was just a Bronx thing, that's how the Bridges Over became a thing, because the Bronx wasn't letting other boroughs in New York have it. So when so when Queens was like, yeah, but the same thing was going on in the parks over here, we all had block parties around our different cities, especially in the 70s and stuff like that, because block parties used to be rent parties. Folks needed money to pay their rent, so you throw a block party and people pitched in. But when you bring big speakers out and you have black people in streetwear, and they fly and they talking about how fly they is, and they showing you their culture, you're gonna get something to relate, because everybody can relate to that. You know what I mean? And so when that happens, it's like we gonna make them hear us, because New York is such an epicenter of what a lot of black folks went to be stars, and that's how New York is viewed. So when hip hop, something that was considered, so how we feel about anything against, the status quo of, like the status quo against American society would be like NWA with F the Police, and you have, Ice-T being from Jersey talking about some, calling himself a pig unaliver, and then you have Philly with Schoolie D being the first ever gangster rapper. And you have people talking about things like just being against it, because that's why people cling to the mob, because they were so against it's prohibition. You love outlaws, we love that. Anybody against that? So when you look at a place like that, and then the people who's front and center is black, the coolest people to ever grace the earth, and you're going to look at it like, I'm going to be a part of that. So when you have the Southerners who don't understand, like, Philadelphians couldn't even get in, and all four pillars of hip hop wasn't created in New York. One of the pillars was created in Philly, and we still wasn't allowed to get in. But like, they don't understand that it was just a one borough thing, and it was multiple. I mean, look at Staten Island. Wu-Tang literally had to force people to come to Staten Island, because they was like, if y'all want it, y'all have to come here. And that's what people did.
And so Keisha is here, and the other day she told me Brooklyn started hip hop. And I
That
was
is
like,
not.
Brooklyn. But you know what? It's not the first time I heard that. But I'm going to go back to the Harlem Renaissance. You know, I didn't know that Chicago at the same time had a renaissance until I was reading comments. Thank you that I read the comments. And somebody was saying, well, that's why Chicago has the real renaissance. So I started researching it. And what I found was both of them was started like simultaneously. Um, and I don't think that one should overshadow the other or be pitted against the other, right? But the way that people, when they talk about New York history and New York, an element of New York's history is happening in another demographic, they tend to make it seem like, make it a competition. They don't just educate us like, do you know at the same time the Harlem Renaissance was happening, Chicago had its own Renaissance? Like, they don't do that. They'll be like, oh, Chicago had the real Renaissance. And that's not the way you educate people, because I understand that our loudest, most embarrassing demographic of New York has the spotlight. But you're shunning away people like me who are just looking for community. And I've been saying lately that too much diversity harms people. You know why I didn't join a post sorority after I graduated? Because some people do that. Because when they started sending me emails, there were a lot of Latino names, and I was only looking for sisterhood, meaning my sisterhood. People don't understand that, but these are people who came here and displaced, and what I'm going to call indigenous foundational Black Americans. Um, Indigenous meaning we're of the soil. So our families can be found here before the revolutionary WAR, if you do your proper research, right? So even in New York, I have a branch that dates back to 1750. And I bet if I picked up that branch again, I could hit the 1600s. And they were enslaved by the Dutch. And a resource I had pulled up right before I came live said it was the Dutch that introduced slavery to New York in 1626 with 11 Africans. So, hi Keisha, hi Melrose, hi Webe.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And I say that a lot. When I have these discussions, I say I'm what I am passionate about preserving all Black American history. You understand what I'm saying? So when we talk about the Great Migration, we have to not ignore the facts. Like people, and it's. Let me collect my thoughts and say this in a digestible way, so no one will be offended. Because I don't want to say it the way I want to say it, because I realize I could say it very abrasively. A lot of people don't educate themselves on all American history, because Black American history is American history. And they just go by what they was taught in elementary school, which was the North was good, the South was bad, which is not the truth. Yes, people know that Philadelphia was the main hub for the Underground Railroad. I live in a home, my grandmother's home, that has a basement that was a part of the Underground Railroad. Just like every other house in Philadelphia, just like every apartment building that was revamped. You cannot find a house in Philadelphia, every other house. You have new builds, you have old builds. The new builds, of course, don't have them, but the old builds, especially in Old City, when I talk about places like Old City, people are living in homes, right, that housed enslaved Black people. Because up north, Black people lived in the attic and in the basement. So we had plantations, but not as many as in the South. So the way enslaved Black people lived up north was totally different from what they lived down south. Okay. And I just wish people understood the politics of the North. Like, it was different politics, right? The Dutch and the Swedes owned slaves up north. The Brits, Irish, I believe, Germans, they were very much so owner of enslaved people down south. And as someone who is 100% on every side of my family, products of the Great Migration, from the first wave to the second wave, whether you talk about my maternal side, you talk about my paternal side, my maternal side, North Carolina and Virginia, my maternal grandfather side, Gullah Geechee, South Carolina. That's their side. Paternal side, straight North Carolina. So, but as someone who is third generation North Philadelphian, I could tell who family been in North Philly for 86 years, who love my city through and through. I'm not going to erase a story that belonged to one of my childhood friends, even though I didn't see him. I haven't seen him in years. Khalil, when we was making our family tree in second grade, bought his family Bible, and his family was enslaved in Mount Airy in North Philly. I mean, in Philly. Mount Airy is not part of North Philly. Well, in my opinion, it's not. But his family was enslaved there. His family been in Philly for multiple generations. And that's why I just feel like people need to educate themselves more, because there's a lot of grown people who do not know that slavery happened up north. And
Right.
and you got to handle them with kitten gloves, because you can't go, oh wow, they're dumb. No, because not everybody knows that. Because I had a conversation with someone who's from Baltimore, and a young lady said that the South, we could start calling the South the motherland. And I wrote in her comments, like, that's not really fair to all Black Americans, because not all Black Americans come from the South. But she was like, oh, but predominantly the Black Americans did. She said she understood that there are Black Americans who was enslaved up north, but only a small amount. No, it wasn't a small amount. I mean, it
And
wasn't
I
as
kind of want to, stand there and introduce Melrose and Thorough Black World. But there's also, hey Belle, there's also my working theory, and whatever I think, another Black person is bringing it to the forefront, right? Where we're saying that there will be some in the North who may not have Southern roots, and on that, hi Keisha.
yeah, they absolutely don't. And that's fine too. But I just feel like, educating yourself would be the best thing. And we do have to handle them with kitten gloves, because people really do not know. And having conversations with people is, I mean, I told you about when I went to the Preservation Society, in that conversation that happened between me and the elder, and because she was a product of the Great Migration, she didn't know about the fact that prior to the Great Migration in 1910, there were already 200,000 Black people in Philadelphia. And majority of them wasn't because they escaped enslavement down south. A good amount of them was, but 85,000 of that is not compared to the ones who was already up there. But so
Yeah. So I would like to introduce Keisha to the chat. Hi Keisha. Hey Day Day.
Hey sis, hey y'all. And
Hey.
family, what's good? What's good?
What's good?
That Brooklyn flavor, you know how I move. But it's very interesting. This interlineage issue, when there should not be. I think there is a combative nature just because of the hot topic, and that's delineation and disaggregation. And some people become a little confused, a little territorial, but there is documented evidence that there was an intermixture, if you will, when it comes to Black Indians and those who descended from chattel slavery. There are a plethora of information that people can cite. But I think that in today's climate on this app, it is easier to be combative than to be intellectually correct. And that takes a little bit of discipline. Even if there is a sort of disagreement, You have to have a bit of discernment as to understand that your fellow brother and sister may not be as intellectually astute as you may be. And so that's where education comes in at. So there really shouldn't be an issue. There is a mountain of evidence. As Sister Boogie once said, there are museums all over the place. And I would encourage a lot of us today to actually visit these museums a little bit more often, even in your respective states and cities. Visit these historical societies. Um, that is very, very important because they hold true documents that you can easily attain with an appointment. It's not going to cost you anything. I believe, unless you have membership, it'll probably cost you the daily entrance fee of that museum. I recently took Sister Brooke and Marcia with me to the Morgan Museum and Library here in Manhattan, in Midtown. I told them both that this is a museum not like what you've seen before. In fact, it's a bit snooty. I told them you'll be able to count the black people on your hand who attend Morgan Museum and Library. This is the personal library, personal collection of J.P. Morgan and his family. That all of the information attained, 90%, the information attained in that personal collection was collected by a black woman who passed for white in order to get that job. So, and she's one of the most profound museum historians and curators there ever was. Some of the pieces in there that you would see will blow your mind, and particularly the first Bible. The Gutenberg Bible is also there, and you will see pictures of persons who look just like us. There are personal letters that you can read between the Morgan family and slave dealers, if you will, of that time. But you have to book an appointment for some of those letters. But I told Sister Brooke and I said, the security going to be on your ass when you go in there. And they couldn't believe what I was telling them. That security is very, very tight. Brooke had placed her fingernail on the cover glass, and security was right on her back because they are not used to seeing us in these type of spaces, number one. Number two, the majority of the security that is black do not come from our lineage. And so I said to them both, just have a little bit poise because the next time you attend, because they don't see faces like us, they will be your ally. And so, they went in and they saw that the only black people in there, outside of those who worked there, were just us three. Because even what do you call it? Oh man, Gilded Age Museum here in New York. You don't see our folks in there. When you go to the Historical Society, first of all, a lot of us don't have membership. So we can't get access to a lot of things. But even if you don't have membership, there is great historical information about enslavement, not just in New York, but throughout the country there. And so I know that Brooke has never been. And so the next trip I take, and I believe you haven't been as well, hopefully the three of us can go together. But just have a little bit poise with our folks on this app because, it can get hot and it can get heated, as we all have seen. But we are pretty much all saying the same thing. We just have to relax a little bit on both sides. because it's us together that's going to have to fight against everybody else. It's everybody else against us. Whether you're Asian, Caribbean, African, European, whatever, everybody is against us. And so just have a little bit more tact because when you do, you will be able to shut people down in an instant. So I'm glad to see the spark that a lot of people have right now, in particular here in New York. As you said, BX, New York is a special place. We have an amalgamation of all immigrants that reside here in this city. However, this city is very, very segregated. We do not live amongst each other. Right now in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, it is occupied by Jewish and Black Caribbean folks. Prior to them, it was all foundational Black Americans who lived in that area and owned those mansions in that area. In fact, the name Crown Heights was originally Crow Heights because it was a derogatory name given to all the Black doctors, businessmen, and lawyers who resided in that area. And so white folks in the city of New York, or white T folks, excuse me, were upset that Black Americans were living so well in that area. When you look at places like Flatbush, Brooklyn, that was the hub for the Dutch when they first came here, and their Black indentured servants lived there and cultivated that area that now belongs to a majority of that is of Caribbean folks who live there, yet none of them know the history of that great place, Flatbush, Brooklyn. And so, we coming through hard. We're moving stealth in a lot of areas, in particular when it comes to this aggregation. And we have to move that way right now because there are so many immigrants who would fight against us in the city council, outside of the city council, in the assembly, in Congress. So we have to move stealth. But I want you all to know that we are making progress. We are beginning to flip certain senators here in New York, but that's just a little tidbit for y'all. But I can't give you all of the information. And kudos again to Brother Divine and the U.S. Freedmen's Project, who are leading the charge in that. And just from my connections and who I am in this city, I just give them an umbrella so that they can be protected in how they move and getting things done for us. So,
And so, Keisha, let me ask you, when you see some of the things that people are saying online about New York, such as a lot of content creators, even if they're of the lineage, will be like, I told you all New Yorkers is going and use Wikipedia sources. Meanwhile, we do know that foundational Black Americans, no matter the state, does outnumber the Afro-descendant immigrants, right? I believe in New York, we just don't have the enclaves that they have or access to the media because they have that machine behind them. The media is a machine. And that's why on Juneteenth, what was happening in New York came to my attention when they spotlighted a Caribbean on Juneteenth over a foundational Black American. And when they spotlighted a Hispanic class during Black History Month, instead of going into a Black school or where there was a sprinkle more of Black children. So do you find it counterproductive, some of the stereotypes they say, like as if every foundational Black American person migrated out of the city?
it's very, very disrespectful. But again, we have to apply for a board membership. I have my interview on the 23rd, to be exact, to get on the board of New York City's Juneteenth celebration because I saw some things, as you said, that were unsavory. And so when elections came around, I applied so I can get into that. But I want you all to know that here in New York City, there is a montage. of foundational Black Americans. We're just scattered because of gentrification. But we're still here, even though there are some who have migrated back to the South because of the cost of living. New York is the number one city, and I'm not saying because of culture or whomever. I'm talking about economics. New York every year has a budget that operates $6 trillion because this is where the financial market resides. That alone um, tells you the power of New York. The greatest and the best of business have to come through New York in some form or fashion. That's just because of that stock trade that goes on here in this city. So New York's budget outdoes that of many countries. But Black people, foundational Black American folks, um, we are we're good. We're good in how we are because, again, sis, we have to move stealth. Even though you hear a lot of chatter. When I talk to people on the street, when I talk to people in, the what do you call those doctors' offices, if you visit, have conversations with people, and you'll be surprised what people are thinking. I've talked to a lot of the elders in particular here in the city, and they are enthused with what is going on because they too lived through that Pan African time of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And they too noticed that it was unbalanced, it was unfair. And so they're coming around. It's just as you said, a media beat that, will tell something totally different. But we are on the move out here and we're not playing. We are not playing. When you go to the reparations hearings, you'll see Sister Kathy Dean up there, who is a vet and an elder, along with sisters like Brooke. So we're covering, and they are afraid. They are very much afraid because, and I'm speaking just for the reparations board, a committee here in New York, which is full of Pan Africanists. But we let them know, we know exactly who they are, we know what they're doing, that we do not agree with an extension because that's what the committee wants. They want an extension so they can pretty much try to turn the tide, if you will, with the verbiage that is going out in these hearings that we are foundational Black Americans and we stand on that. That we know some of the members and what they do, like the attorney Laurie, who's on there, uh, Dr. Ron Daniels and his shenanigans, who is on there. You have a Jamaican woman who is on there, and they think they have power because they have some folks in the city council who butter up to Kathy Hochul in hopes for crumbs that she throws their way. Some of the historians that the committee hires to do historical research for these hearings, we challenge their education as well. Every hearing that I attend, I challenge the historians. It got so rough at the Schomburg with Dr. Ray Wimbush and Craig Carr. They couldn't get out of there fast enough, but we were on their asses and letting them know that the historical context that they were given was unfair. You have to stick to enslavement and not muddy the waters with Jim Crow and redlining, because when you do all of that, you allow others to grandfather clause themselves onto our claim. And so we recommend or demand that the historians focus their research on the enslavement period here in the state of New York. Because when you do that, and I would encourage everyone who is listening, please research the reverse underground railroad. That is something that is rarely ever spoken of. And it ran rampant. So much so that some of our great leaders had to leave the country because they were under threat of being kidnapped. Some of their children were kidnapped. Henry Highland Garnett lived in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And his wife was the founder of the first black free school here in Lower Manhattan. But he had to leave the U.S. for a while because he himself was a victim of an attempted kidnapping. The Reverse Underground Railroad will give you a broad understanding of how New York, Philadelphia, and Boston connect. It was these three states where the Democratic Party itself were leaders or the head of some of these kidnapping clubs. And you know, it's very, very important that we research that history.
Thank you, Keisha. I want to bring in, and I want you to sit right there because I just recently read that New York State wants to change its state constitution. But hi, Melrose. Are you there?
Peace, family. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Peace.
How do I sound? Am I good?
You're good, brother. You're good.
Nice. There's like music playing in the background. Is that from your end or something?
Yeah, that I turned on a
It,
jazz
it don't
type of
sound bad.
music.
It don't sound bad. I just want
Okay.
to. I'm new to this whole Tic Tac thing, but yeah, it's a pleasure and an honor to be up here with all of you. It
Thank
was
you.
a pleasure and honor meeting you in person for the first time the other day.
Thank you.
However, it ended in an unfortunate circumstance. But yeah, Keisha, salute to you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be in your company. I first discovered Miss Keisha over on she was doing a stream with Brooke, Brother Divine, and another brother. That other brother, that was my first time meeting him too. Well, making his acquaintance as far as the internet. And they was spitting, and Miss Keisha, she was spitting some fire. She talked about how Alton Maddox had the children doing mock trials over the summer. If possible, I hope she could touch on that a little bit during this live or whatever. But she has a ton of knowledge and she really paints good pictures with her words. So I love her. And then salute to Afro. Like I said, I'm new to this whole Tic Tac thing. And for years, people have been trying to get me to come over here. But I'm like, yo, it's too much. But earlier this year, DW, she convinced me to come on here and upload some stuff. But recently, I don't know, I guess like, I don't know, maybe the past 6 months or something, or maybe longer, I've been noticing that outside of Afro's lives, because he'll do his lives and then he'll have like some other audio content that he'll upload. And it'll just be like a picture. And I'm like, damn, where is he doing this? When is he doing these lives? Because I'm thinking, it was on Twitter. And I'm like, damn, I don't be seeing him go live on Twitter Spaces like that. So where's? And then I found out he was on TikTok doing it. So I've just been like, cool, just listening back. I've been hearing you on the upload. So I'm like, cool. But then recently, maybe like a week ago, my YouTube algorithm, it got flooded with a bunch of tethers just saying, oh my God, Tariq Nasheed's on TikTok and he's going crazy. So that's when I recently followed him on here as well. I got to catch a few of those lives. And now I'm catching your live and I appreciate that. But yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no doubt. To talk about the topic, how do we heal interlineage issues while combating ethnocide? As far as the interlineage issues, I want to go out there and personally say, from my perspective, I think 95% of those interlineage issues are really just online, because this is a real story that happened a day or two ago. There's a brother, he's from like Kansas or somewhere out there. I'm not going to say his name, but if you go check my timeline, you'll see it. And you can tell that this is a real interaction that happened. He's from like Kansas or somewhere. He's part of some sort of like native Aboriginal tribe, you know? He's one of these people that are online, and he claims that he's like, hey, I'm part of this tribe. These are my people. Hey, y'all claiming this. Y'all not that or whatever. And, you know, I'm not talking bad about the brother. I'm just saying, like, from what I observed from him. And every year here in New York, around this time, they have like a native indigenous parade. It's like a big thing with people from all over the United States and South America, Central America. They come here to, you know, do the whole Indian thing. And that's what he promotes. He's like, yeah, I'm part of this tribe and we was here first. And, you know, if you this, you that. And I'm like, all right, you know, I've never had a negative interaction with him. You know, he's been cool with me for the most part. We've always been cool. But, you know, he does do what we would consider to be gang banging, you know, like some people, they'll be name banging or native banging or whatever type of banging they're doing. Niggas be banging up online, part of my language, because I know TikTok is sensitive. But, you know, I do see him take part in that. But I walk in a local store around my way the other day and I see him and I'm like, oh, is this the brother from Twitter? I'm like, and then I'm processing it in my head that, oh, he do be posting that he be in New York around this time of year for the, you know, Native American Indian joint. And like I said, I've never had any negative interactions with him or none of that. And when I saw him and I processed that, I eventually go up to him and I'm like, yo, your name is such and such? He was like, yeah. I was like, yo, my name is Mike. I just told him my real name. And then I was like, yo, what you doing here? And I asked him knowing that he was here for that. And he said, I'm here for the parade. So when he said that, I said, yeah, man, speaking of that parade, here in New York around this time of year, we have what they call the African American Day Parade in Harlem. And he was like, oh, word? I was like, yeah, man, it's every year. You should come. He was like, all right. And then I was like, yeah, they just had the annual post-parade meeting this past Sunday. And I went along with other people and everybody gave, you know, their testimony and what they think could be better or changed or whatever. And I told them that I said, hey, we should change it from African American Day Parade to Foundational Black American Day Parade. And we should change the logo from the continent of Africa to the continent of America. And we should change the colors to red, white, and blue. And then he was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I said, they kicked me out because after I said that, I said, hey, who's that white lady? Because there was one white lady that was part of the board. And I said, the room erupted and they kicked me out. And then he was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And then I was like, yeah, so, you know, what you doing here or whatever. And then he was like, yeah, we just going to be here for that day. We staying over here. I was like, cool. And it was just cool. It was like that, you know, we kept it moving. And then the crazy thing is when I'm walking off, he going to say to me, because he was with his girl, he going to say to me, be safe. And then she was like, yeah, be safe. And I turn around and I'm like, I'm saying to myself, I'm like, yo, they don't know where they at. I said, yo, y'all please stay dangerous. And then, you know, they kind of laughed and then I walked off. And then later on that night, famous, you know, well, not famous, but a popular, well-known Puerto Rican drill rapper, he was unfortunately, you know, murdered right up the block from the hotel that they're staying in.
You can't say that.
Oh,
you got to say like unalive.
All right, pardon me. Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, pardon me. Unalive. Mm-hmm. Right up the block from the exact hotel that he's staying at with his girl. He's over here telling me be safe. I'm like, nigga, I know where I'm at. I know how to deal with this. You from out of town. But I say that to say, he's not when we meet each other, like people, like I said, me and him, we've never had a negative interaction, but when people meet each other online, I mean, in person from online, 9 times out of 10, even if they was banging against each other, it's going to be friendly and copacetic. Niggas ain't going to have, you know what I mean, that energy that just be happening online. A lot of this shit is online. When we meet up with each other, if we just happen to see each other, for wherever it may be, you know, you might be in somebody's city, they might be in yours. If niggas is either going to meet up and chop it up and be like, man, that wasn't about nothing. Shit, what you doing over here? You know, and it's going to be like that. Or Niggas is gonna see the person, not say nothing, and then go online and just keep banging online. But there's no real issues.
Okay.
Does that
So
make sense?
it makes sense, except the American Indians, um, to me, I'm gonna use the word infiltrated. Like we know we have our USA American Indians. Some of us do have that descendancy too, but there's the Caribbean. That once, that kind of throws monkey wrenches into it. They say they are American too. This is the mainland. It's a lot of confusion, but I've been asserting recently that if you watch, especially the New York State reparations hearings, and they did it at the African American Day parade community feedback. There was a lady that stood up, and I hope you heard her, where she said, I don't come from Africa. My people always been here. And then she gave her spiel of what she wanted to see with the parade. She did not turn around to us and say, don't call yourself foundational Black Americans. So even the American Indians, or those who identify as such, is standing up and giving
Are
their
you
take.
talking about the one that had the issue with Brooke?
No, no. Remember the
Okay.
elder who
Oh, all
said,
right.
I'm
Yeah.
Black
All right. Yeah.
American and I would like to hear more of our music. And then they was looking at her and said, what are you talking about? And then a lady stood up and she was like, she's saying she's foundational Black American. And she went over there and sat by the lady so the lady wouldn't be by herself. Not
Oh
the one
yeah,
who,
those
uh,
two sisters. That's Lovely Brown and the other sister from Twitter. But yeah, they were speaking facts, and
okay.
I know that was our first time meeting, but that's usually how it goes with me. It's like what's his name, Jazz from the Fresh Prince. Like they'll always find it because
Melrose got
you
put out,
saw it,
y'all. But before we
but
talk about how you got put
all
out,
right.
Melrose, you touched on something very important when you gave your feedback. You said, I can go to any place in Harlem and a foundational Black American business will have hired a Caribbean or a Latino person. But if I go to their businesses, they're not hiring Black Americans. So if we change the name, we change the game. Can you provide a little more insight? Because that's important. When they talk about unity, economics would be one, correct? They're not exercising unity here in New York as far as economics. Go ahead, Melrose.
When I first came into the meeting, the first person I saw was Brother Divine, and he was like, "Yo, what's good, bro?" And me and Divine, we're brothers at this point. Like we've been through it throughout the years. And he's like, I'm like, "Yo, chilling, regular." So I sat down, we just chopping it up, and he kind of looked in my bag a little bit. So he's like, "You going to a party after that?" And I was like, "Oh, that's the signal." So I pull out the paper plates with the American flag design on it. I pull out the napkins with the American flag on it, design on it. And then speaking of, Pan-Africanism and economics, I pull out the delicious, nutritious, rare, exotic fruit from the Caribbean called a cherimoya, aka a custard apple. So I'm sorry. When I first walked in and I'm like, "Yo, what's up? Chilling." He was like, "Yo, I heard the interview you did with BX up on TikTok." And I'm like, yeah, that shit was dope. So then, like I said, when he looked in the bag and said, "Yo, you going to a party?" And I pulled out the American flag paper plates and napkins. And then I pulled out the fruit. As I'm cutting it, I'm like, "Yo, this is a cherimoya, aka a custard apple." And then he finished my sentence. Right before I could say, "I used to sell these," he said, "You used to sell those." And when he said that, I said, damn, he really did listen to the interview that me and you did. Because, this is like the first place publicly where I really got into depth talking about how I used to sell these imports from the Caribbean. So, I cut a piece. I cut it into like six different pieces. I take a piece, he takes a piece. And then I'm passing out the American flag paper plates and I'm introducing it to everybody. I'm giving it to them, letting them know what it is. And then everybody's like, "Oh, it's good. It tastes like this. It tastes like pineapple. It tastes like banana. It tastes like soursop." So everybody's cool. So then by that time, Brooke comes in and she sits down. She's like, "Oh, hey guys." And, so then the second one, it wasn't as ripe. So it really wasn't as juicy. It wasn't as good, but I cut it and I told her, I said, "Hey, it isn't as ripe. It isn't as juicy, but just eat this part. You'll like it." I go around. I give out some more plates and more fruit to other people. I come back. I don't see nothing in Brooke's hands. I don't see nothing in her lap. So I finish eating my piece. And by the time I'm done, I wipe my hands and my face. I say, "Yo, Ain't it funny how Brooke Slick threw her plate away and act like nobody saw it? And then we all start laughing or whatever. Then the place, it packs in. Everybody comes in. And then by the time you came in, the testimony had just started, so you didn't miss anything. You probably just missed when the commissioners were going around introducing themselves and saying what role they do in the parade, but you ain't really missed nothing, so you caught mostly everything. And as you saw, before I really went or even interrupted one or two times, there was people turning up there doing the most, but they just, always just find a reason to kick me out. But yeah, my whole testimony was if we change the name, we change the game. This parade is losing steam. I've been going to this parade my whole life. How long have you been going, BX?
I went when I was younger, but then I stopped going. Just like the lady was saying, she didn't feel included. She wanted more elements of our culture. When I saw all them flags on television the last time, I was like, they look African. I ain't going. I think too much diversity does help us. But as DW, because she's very instrumental in getting me to go, her and Brooke, getting to go to this community meeting, getting me to go to the parade. Like, you can't complain if you ain't out there, trying to change the narrative or provide your insight. So shout out to them. Shout out to everybody who's giving me the guidance on how it is to come out and sit amongst those who may resist this. Because it didn't go without notice that when she said Black American as opposed to African American, there was a couple of gasps. But I want you to focus in on how they.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, but like I was saying, I was like, yeah, I've been coming to this parade for over 20 years. It's losing steam, it's losing motion. And like I said, if we go to any foundational, and we have historically world-renowned foundational Black American businesses in Harlem, specifically, especially the eateries. We have Sylvia's, we have Charles Pan Fried Chicken, we have Melba's. You go to any of those, I think like the second nigga in charge at Charles Pan Fried Chicken is like an African or something. I go in there, I go to these different establishments. Hey, let me get the short ribs, red rice, and green beans. By the way, where are you from? I ask everybody, everywhere I go, I give people tips, but I ask everybody, where are you from? And oh yeah, I'm from here, my family from here. Y'all see the video, so y'all know this ain't nothing I'm making up. And people, some of them be from Guyana, Nigeria, whatever, cool. But then personally, I really don't go to the African businesses in Harlem. I really don't go to the Jamaican spots in Harlem. But if I don't go to the Asian spots in Harlem, I don't go to none of the bootleg spots in Harlem. But if you go in those spots, they're not hiring any of us. They start with hiring their own, then they get to hiring, whoever comes next on the racial pyramid or the color caste system from whatever, So if the Asians own it, once they run out of Asian employees, if they can't hire some Arab women, they'll hire some African men and women to run it. Go ahead.
So I want to remind people, right? When we did the interview, you did discuss your website and you have foundational Black American small businesses on there, correct?
I have, yeah, that was the focus. And then you might see like some other flags because what will be happening is.
You mind a Leo?
No.
You mind a Leo?
Yeah, no. Yo, look. I be seeing people and, they be doing whatever they be doing. And, I be knowing better, but I be just supporting people. And then I be pitching it. And then I'd be like, hey, I'm going to put you on the thing. And then I kind of say that sometimes before I do the lineage check. And then I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll put them on there. So you might see one or two, like a Haitian flag here from a beauty joint or like whatever. But no, yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. Primarily foundational Black American business, Black business directory.
Okay. Thank you. I can't say too much, but I get it. primarily us, with a little caveat there, little twisted turn.
Yeah, and then if somebody's not FBA and they catch me like, hey, I heard you got this going, I want to get some promotion. Oh yeah, sure, no doubt. Just send me an email and a deposit. You could pay to get on. But as far as foundational Black Americans, they don't got to pay, because if you can't do the most, the least you can do is the least. And if I got a platform like melroseradio.com with a Black business directory where I upload, businesses from professionals that offer products and services, then that's the least I could do for folks. So I'm going to be glad to do that free of charge.
Free promotion. There you have it, y'all. Free promotion. So I want to kind of bring Afro back in. I know Afro's very busy, so I love and appreciate when he comes. Grace my panel. I do. Afro, what do you think is so far as to everything that you've heard?
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Learning a lot. I'm of course I wasn't there. I know there's a thing going on as far as I guess the post meeting of the parade, or a post parade meeting or something, and I've been hearing small things about it, so it is interesting to hear more people tell their experience on that. I would want to add to that. I think that this live just illustrates how much New Yorkers are really trying to hold the line and are really working to push the lineage forward and to highlight the lineage. And I want to give a shout out to the Foundation Black American New Yorkers who are doing that, because personally, y'all really don't get a lot of credit. I feel like y'all do get a lot of flack. One thing I don't like, and I'm trying not to have the movement kind of deteriorate into this, but I noticed that there's like a lot of like state like banging to a degree, like, hey, what y'all doing over here? Y'all letting the tethers run amok, and y'all ain't doing this, and y'all ain't doing that. So everybody's kind of like trying to one up the other state, and it's creating almost like a tribalism effect among the lineage, and that's something that we shouldn't be doing, because everybody is doing their own thing. You know what I'm saying? Everybody is working for the lineage in their own way, like as far as maybe reparations are concerned, with especially in New York with the task force going on, and in California with the task force going on. So everybody is doing kind of their part. That's how I see the situation. And I feel like if everybody's doing their part, everybody should be credited. Okay, we should just give one credit to a state and then treat another credit or another state like the ugly duckling that we really don't want to say anything positive about. I don't really agree with that. So shout out to you all.
Yo, BX, can I add one thing real
Thank you,
quick?
Afro. Sure, Melrose.
Yo, that was our first time meeting. I don't know if you've been to any other things, but it's documented that me, Brooke, DW, Devon, the other sister that was like, hey, we don't got enough representation, and her dude, and a bunch of other people, we put a lot of work in Harlem, and none of us are from Harlem. There's probably like, 2 or 3 people that's really from Harlem that, be out there, be up on social media, putting in work. But for the work we do in New York City, a lot of it gets done in Harlem. And unfortunately, there's a lot of, I want to use my words right. Can I say domestic and foreign Sambos? Is that appropriate to say? Man, it's
Yeah,
not.
'cause I don't think TikTok knows what Sambo is yet, because they are calling Sambo Uncle Tom. So I mean,
All right, buck dancers. But yeah, as you saw at that meeting, most of them, besides that one girl who, I don't know if you were there and got the introduction, she said her grandfather was one of the founders. That was like the lighter skinned girl who she could have been Puerto Rican, I don't know. But then that one white girl, besides them, it was really just a bunch of, I want to
Pan African.
say full FBAs or maybe half FBAs, but they were older. They were of older generations, and yeah, the Pan African mindset. But it's really not even Pan Africanism because if we really, I gotta watch my words. If
There
we
was one who looked West. I'm sorry, but people say we look
yeah.
alike, but you can tell a West Indian from time to time. There was one there who said she didn't see anything wrong with West Indian music being played. I think she was the West Indian. But go ahead, carry on.
Yeah, but like I said, I just want to put that out there, and I'm pretty sure it's the same way in a lot of these places. Like when we look at California or Chicago or South Carolina or Atlanta or wherever state we're looking at where people are doing stuff, it's usually kind of centered in one place. Because when you
Yeah.
say Chicago, you're talking about Illinois, and that's how it be promoted. Oh, the Illinois thing, but it's talking about Chicago. But then a lot of people who are from there, they're probably not even from Chicago. They're coming from other places to be there. When you hear the Georgia this, it could probably be in I don't really know Georgia, Savannah somewhere, but we're thinking Atlanta, but you got a lot of people that's not from Savannah or Atlanta or whatever. They come in there, and like I said, when you hear a lot of these New York things, a lot of this is going down in Harlem, and most of us ain't from Harlem, but we still make it our business to go there. And then, like I said, when you got people like Brooke and Divine and Coach Reverend Phyllis, y'all don't even know who that is.
No, I
These are
don't.
and Sister Antoinette, y'all don't even know who these people are, but
But
these are
Miss
the
Nat
people
is
that's
on
going
Twitter, correct?
upstate. No. Shout out to Sister Nat. This is
Okay.
another Antoinette. She's part of the U.S. Freedmen Project. These are the
Okay.
people that are going to Albany, going to DC. And then, like I said, a lot of us, we travel to other states to, partake in, fellowship or, business or whatever. But like I said, you do got a lot of people just really dedicated. And if you're, I'm going to land here, a lot of people that you see online, they're
Mm.
really the people in their state doing it. And it's really just them. Like it may be a few other people that's dedicated to it, but it's really not a lot. And it don't take enough. I mean, it don't take a lot. It just takes enough. So I'm gonna land there. And once again, I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. So I'm basically a baby to going into these places. The African American Day Parade community feedback was my first in person. I believe social media activism is a thing. It calls awareness. I am a journalist, and so a lot of my work has been done online. My advocacy, right? And then I wasn't tapped in, and so sometimes it was frustrating for me to see things like I read in the paper. Oh, we're going to have Hocho approves a reparation study. And then months down the line, you find out the meetings are going on or whatever. Like, it's just so hard being on the outside and trying to activate. And so I thank God that I was able to tap into like Brooke, Brother Divine, Sister Keisha, you. And so y'all are guiding me as I put my boots on the ground. So yeah, I'm a baby to this, but I don't step on anybody's toes. I ask, what do you think about this? I value your insight, your input, and ask you, what's the verbiage? You know what I'm saying? Because we all have to be on one accord. We're here to help each other, not sabotage each other. So I'm cool with playing support, no matter how long I've been activating or writing my stories or my history accounts for the lineage. Y'all do the hard work, right? So I'm support. That's use me. I'm support. My platform is yours when you want to interview, you want me to share something, get people on board to the cause of action, and that's what makes a movement work.
Since I heard that at the meeting because I wasn't able to attend um, the African American Day parade, and Sister Brooke and Brother Divine gave me the 411 on what happened. That there was a sister, or a black woman, I should say, uh, bi ethnic woman that
Um,
was there that talked about Brooke, myself, and Tad, that we disrupted her meeting uh,
yeah.
that she had in Brooklyn, which was disrespectful in its approach. It was called Diaspora Wars. And you had a whole panel of Pan Africanists, right? And they, off the rip, was talking disrespectful about Black Americans, and I wasn't gonna go at first. Then at the last minute, I said, you know what, I'm gonna pull up. So Brooke attended, Devon met us there, Kat was there, and there was another sister that we met there, FBA sister, and she couldn't even get past 20 minutes. She got up and walked out. She felt so disrespected. So Brooke ran behind her, brought her back inside, letting her know that she wasn't by herself. And you know,
Yeah.
we had to turn up because it was a hit piece against foundational Black Americans. So we wasn't having it. But I know she was there, and she said some crazy things. But that just goes to show that
Is that the lady that Brooke got into it with?
Yeah, and
yeah,
the lady, to me, Keisha, I kind of figured she was who she was before Brooke said something, because she was trying to imitate you with that. I said what I said. I said, look at this. She be all corny and biting lines and whatnot. You know, New Yorkers don't like that. You got to be original.
right.
Yeah,
Um,
so I pretty much knew, I understood what she was up there doing, you know. And then Brooke confirmed it when she was like, y'all may not understand this, but she's actually talking to me. So yeah, she was there, and she went to talking about the galaxies, we're indigenous people to the galaxy and all of this. My thing is this, change. I told them y'all had free reign and y'all been running amok, some as I said, to them, but now we're asking for inclusion, you know, which would be to change the name. But they're dead set against changing the name. And they did say that we could rent a float, we could wave our flags there. And I'm thinking that we should participate a little bit more, even if, because Melrose was stating doing our own thing as foundational Black Americans. But I'm with DW now that I went and had my no problem, Melrose. Now that I went and had my experience with listening to them, that the more we show up with our flags, even if we chip in, get a float, do our thing on the parade strip that they allow, respectfully, of course, they don't want twerking and cuss words in the music, the name would change itself, because they'll be like, oh, it's the Black American Day parade, you know. But we gotta show up.
Absolutely, I agree. Even when we were there at the parade, that's where I actually met you at.
Right.
Um, you saw a lot of us out there repping our flags, and people were asking. As me and Sister Brooke was walking, we were actually in the parade with the Freedmen's Project. We marched in the parade, and they were asking us, what's that flag? What's that about? Where can I get that? It was a couple of brothers who were out there actually selling them, but you got a spot, you see. And as I told Brooke, that's why they had this meeting in the first place. They never seen anything like that before. Never. As Brother Melrose said, I've been going to the parade for years. I used to live in Harlem for about 10 years. So I used to go all the time. And you never seen the Black Heritage flag. You never seen the Juneteenth flag. This year was the first time I've seen so many. So, like you said, if we keep pushing, the name will change itself.
Right. And I'm hearing that well, there was, I think, one from the South who was there actually this year. Ken, y'all probably familiar with her. She does be in the chat. She is a New Yorker, and she had moved to New Jersey, but she came for the parade too. I didn't get to meet her, but there are people coming back to the city to partake in the parade. And to them, I want to say thank you, because they're the ones that's realizing the agenda and showing support, as opposed to doing think pieces on how we not here contributing to our racial. I tell you, I'd be so mad. I'd be windmilling for my life. But I want to introduce Blue Fire to the conversation. Hi, Blue. She's also a New Yorker. She's from Rochester.
Hey y'all, how you doing?
So that's where you went to one of the meetings at in Rochester.
Uh
Was
huh.
there? Me and Brooke was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't really tell us up here in Rochester about those meetings. They turning Rochester into a Latino fest, so that's what they doing. They pushing, like, majority of black people are on the west side We did have a
Who
lot of
did this?
people from the east side on that was black, but they pushing them more to the west, and you see a lot of Latinos. So they changing name. They trying to change the school names and trying to make them Latinos and all this stuff. So they doing a whole erasure of of our community and making it Latino center.
Blue, you went to Tyreek's reparations hearings once, right? His rallies, his
Yeah,
rallies.
I went to his rallies.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Blue Fire is definitely foundational Black American. I want to say this about hip hop, right? When we say that hip hop is unaligned, right? I believe that's because there's no noticeable New York sound. We know our greats, right? Nas, stuff
Hmm.
like that. But I mean, continuous. But I hear it's in upstate New York, right? Do
Yeah.
you know? It is? Who do you recommend we listen to from upstate? I like Benny the Butcher. I've seen his movies before.
I don't
But he's from
really
Buffalo.
I don't really listen. We got a lot. We got a big music thing. My older siblings will know more. Like
Okay.
if you ask Retro, he knows more about
Okay.
that.
All right, because I be trying to tell people hip hop gonna come home. She just, running amok right now throughout the country. But
Yeah.
she gonna get tired. She gonna come back home. And maybe upstate.
Yeah, we have a
We
lot of
forgetting
we
on
like,
upstate.
but believe it or not, a lot of people started their careers that's like in the major music industry. They started
uh,
their careers up here,
oh, because
like
of the studio time?
Genuine Timberland,
Uh,
Missy Elliott.
but aren't they Southerners? Make
Yeah,
that
but
clarification for me.
yeah, but we had a one of like a at the time we had one of like a the biggest music studios called Dejalon. So they
Hmm.
claimed up here to make music. And Stevie J is from up here.
Yeah, we don't want to claim Stevie J. Good job when he was
He's a
hot,
music.
but
I ain't gonna hold you. He is a music genius. He's a
okay.
music genius, but he kind of weird.
So I kind of want to pivot to and bring in like some more of the nation. So Chicago did have their reparation hearings disrupted. I'm not sure if y'all saw the video of the Latinos telling Black Americans to get a job. They were lazy. Afro was there. Afro, can you tell us what it was like then? I know we touched on it before, but for this, even if you could be as brief as you want, when the Latinos disrupted the Chicago reparations hearings.
Well, this came this came around the it was called out because this came after the summer where Brandon Johnson said that he was going to establish a because that was one of the first things he said he was going to do when he got in during his campaign. He said he was going to establish a committee or he was going to fund a committee for reparations. This was in 2023. Okay. So that's what he said he was going to do. And that when he first got in, all of the money, all of the government subsidies and stuff like that that he had the ability to use was being given directly towards immigrants. And he had skipped over and pretty much skipped past, violated his promise of setting up the reparations committee, even though it's just a committee, it's not reparations, but you know, he had pretty much ignored that throughout the summertime, and he was setting up millions of dollars specifically so he could set up housing and food and all of this stuff for a bunch of the immigrants that were coming in. So the next time we had a city council, we were going up there to say, "Hey, you're," because it was a budget meeting, and we were talking about how the reparations Mayor Johnson had skipped past the reparations and he was focused on in the whole budget meeting before the thing because Brandon Johnson tends to do a press conference before the city council and then he does like a Q&A afterwards. Okay. So we were there listening to the press conference and he's talking about how they need more money and they need to allocate more money for the immigrants. And we went there and we was all like, hey, you sending all this money to the immigrants and you giving all this money to the Latinos and you hooking the Hispanic community up in Chicago. Yet we're sitting up here, the black people is who voted for you, who got you in the office, and you've ignored our reparations. And there was a whole bunch of immigrants who were coming in talking about, because it was black people and immigrants. There was a whole bunch of people on the mic talking about, oh, we need this because this is it's hard out here for new arrivals and migrants who are fleeing persecution and all of this stuff. So it was a lot of tension going on, and it's so much so that the meeting got recessed and it got postponed to another day, which caused a lot of people to argue because everybody wasn't able to say what they wanted to say. So Miss Jackson was talking to, because she knows some of them. So she was talking to some of the city council members because Brandon Johnson had left at this point. So she was talking to some of the city council members, and then there was this one Hispanic dude. He came up there a couple of times, and he was talking about how ain't no reparations, and then he was like, you lazy, no more money for you." I can't remember exactly word for word what he was saying, but he was arguing with Miss Jackson about reparations because she was saying something to the city council members about how they're voting, because the only way Brandon Johnson can get it done is if the city council votes on it, unless he signs an executive order. But the budget meeting was a thing for the city council to vote, but they vote like they're puppets. So she was getting on them about that, and then here comes that Hispanic dude calling her lazy, saying ain't no more money and all of this stuff. But they were the Hispanic community were up there because they wanted to keep the money flowing into their community. And when we said something about reparations, they came up right after we said something about reparations because it was a few of us. We all went there as a group. Anytime we said something about reparations, they came right up there to talk about how bad Mexico was and how the, their kids don't need to learn English and it takes resources and they don't have and they're poor families and stuff like that and they're not used to this country and all of this and all of that. So they came up there to pretty much say that because of their quote unquote condition of quote unquote immigrating to the country, they deserve priority over us for reparations.
The audacity. So I saw a Twitter clip of Miss Jackson, very powerful, when she told uh, Johnson, right? Word on the street, and you're Haitian, and we're coming for those seats. Can you tell me what it's like to have a woman like Miss Johnson leading the charge? Very strong, very powerful, and I'm with her. We coming for those seats. Oh, before you answer, Afro, we are interviewing. So we've interviewed Laverne Turner. He is foundational Black American, even if he doesn't identify as such. For Minneapolis, like Minnesota mayor. So, foundational Black Americans, please tap into him. He is actively on this app interviewing with some of the creators. Also, there's a Dr. Hamilton that I got to sit with and ask a question or two. I thought that she was saying, the same thing people are saying about New York. Somebody always got an immigrant in their household, even though they're foundational Black American. But here's the thing: we can't worry about the families that have bi-ethnic in them, right? Because they're bi-ethnic. The other non-FBA person should understand that if it wasn't for our ancestors on this land, they wouldn't have the life with their partner. Like, we can date outside of our ethnic group. I'm not condoning, that other stuff. But let's face it, my kids are 30. They are bi-ethnic, so it happens, right?
So I can't
But
date a white woman that cook good chicken bits.
no, you can't do none of that shit, Brian. None of
We know how
that.
much you love white chicken, Brian. Please.
So
So we don't have to lose ourselves or our purpose because we have a mixed immigration type of household, because that is very disrespectful to the ancestors. And they too, just like God, won't bless a mess, honey. Okay?
Okay.
So it's important for us to, I think it's important for those in bi-ethnic households to learn how to share culture, right? And I'm gonna just say this example because it was hilarious at the time. So my son, my oldest son was 5 years old, and his father came in and wanted to give him some food. It was Jamaican food, and my son wouldn't eat it. So my children's father was like, "Eat it. It's Jamaican," with his accent. No, I don't want it. I don't want it. And I just cracked up. I just thought it was so funny. But there's a way to establish what is culturally Black American and what is culturally Jamaican, and it can mesh. Hey, have some curry goat with some baked macaroni and cheese. Heck, I care. But just don't ever lose the purpose of foundational Black Americans, which is reparative justice. Because when we do good, your household does good, your person does good. That's what I find. Okay, I'm talking a lot. Go ahead,
BX,
Afro.
I wanted to also adjust. I think Professor Allen is on here now,
Uh
so
huh.
I would love for you to do an interview with him. He's very
Oh,
knowledgeable.
cool. All right. If you want to interview, Afro, you there or you got a call? I want him to talk about Miss Jackson. Miss Jackson told
No,
him
no,
he
I'm
was
here.
coming for those seats. Go ahead, Afro.
Okay. Let me share. Okay. So, yeah, shout out to Miss Jackson. Very powerful, strong spirit with her. Um, this is something that me and Miss Jackson about Brandon Johnson being Haitian. Me and Miss Jackson both kind of both kind of know, and we've known for a minute, but it's something that neither of us have any like solid evidence of, you know. So because we don't have any solid evidence of, there's a chance we could be wrong. And because there's a chance we can be wrong, we can't just say something and then we wind up being wrong. Because if we say something and we are wrong on the slight chance that we are wrong, then it's gonna make the whole movement look bad. It's gonna make us all look bad. You know, it's kind of gonna put a stain on that. So that's why we allude to it and we say we suspect it, but we never confirm it. That's why when she was up there, she says word on the street is she didn't necessarily say he was a Haitian, but she was all like, okay, whether you are or aren't, and that's just kind of a way to protect herself because me and her had talked about how like, okay, either whoever gets on the mic, either me or you, whoever gets on the mic, we're gonna say something about him being Haitian, but she got on the mic, so she was all like, okay, so she said something about it. But she said it in a way that was careful enough for if he isn't Haitian, you know, she doesn't get like any backlash from that. You know what I'm saying? So she covered herself, so that was a smart way to do that. But she's talking about the seats because this is going back to what we were talking about as far as the reparations thing with the Hispanics saying that we were lazy. Because Brandon Johnson, and really the Democratic Party in general, because it's beyond Brandon Johnson, but the Democratic Party has such a monopoly on the Chicago government where the mayor is a staunch Democrat, the governor is a staunch Democrat, and like 95%, because there's only 50 people in the council, in the city council, because there's 50 wards, aldermen, I mean, there's 50 aldermen and alderwomen, alderperson in the city because there's 50 wards in the city. And if I'm not mistaken, there's only four of them who are Republican or who are not Democrat. And I think of two, they're like quote unquote like independent necessarily, even though they lean Democrat and they vote with Brandon Johnson. So whether Brandon Johnson, there's limits to where Brandon Johnson can do if he has an executive order. But the thing is that everything he proposes on the city council automatically goes through because they're in lockstep with Brandon Johnson. They're like in such lockstep. So she's saying we need people in these seats who are not going to just go along with whatever the mayor says. Even if Brandon Johnson's not in office, you need people in these seats who are doing what's in the best interest, sorry, for their ward. So we're already kind of talking, and I don't want to say too much, but we're already
Okay.
talking to different people who are saying that they're willing to run for alderman. next
Okay,
time around
yeah,
whenever
let's
this.
not give out strategy or who they are.
Yeah, of course
Yeah,
not. Of course not.
but that's good. And they're foundational Black Americans, correct?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. I think Brother Brian has a question for you, Afro.
Well, just for anybody, really.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to pivot from Mayor Johnson because there was something else I wanted to add, but either be anybody on the panel can answer this. But my question is this voting rights thing that I'm seeing where they say they trying to remove Section 2. How would that affect Black Americans in Louisiana and especially in the United States once it happens? Like, what's the negative impact that will have overall towards Black Americans? And do we blame who to blame for that? So I know how to explain that to people. Anybody can answer that question. They educate on what's going on.
Afro, you know the answer?
Okay, well, yeah, I'll start off with this. Um, the Republicans do a thing where they do like to have restrictions on black vote, the pretty much black representation within within politics. So they do a lot of redistricting, so that way they can have a monopoly when it comes to power. So this is something that the Republicans are known for. The Democrats know of this, but they don't really push back against this. So when they talk about voting rights, most of what they advocate for is for immigrants who don't have citizenship to be able to vote. And we've seen cases of immigrants who do not have citizenship have been voting in elections. So this is what the Republicans are stripping. Now, I don't know exactly. I need to look into the fact that they said something about Section 2 being removed because I got to review what exactly Section 2 is of that. How would
So,
it, how
oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
how it would I'm gonna just land right here and I'll
Dealing
say
with the
how
race. I think Section 2 dealing with the, just like you explained in the beginning, I think it's dealing with the race part of. So what they're doing is what the Supreme Court, if I'm saying it correct, anybody can correct me on this, but what the Supreme Court is doing is trying to make everything not race based no more.
Well,
Am
that
I right on that?
is
Am I right on that with the Section 2 part? That's what that
Section
was.
2
That's correct.
was
Okay.
Section 2 was a act that was a part of the Civil Rights Voting Act. It was an act that was to basically protect Black Southerners' right to vote. And because they took, that DEI out of it, what they're saying is, well, because that was based on race, right? We should remove it. But in Louisiana, because it's a red state, that state, and plus Louisiana already has its own separate government from everybody else in the United States. So, because till this day, it always been that way. So in Louisiana, Black Southerners will basically have to show their ID, which is a real ID, or their, identification of birth, and to vote. Basically, it's voter suppression all over again. That's what it is. It's voter suppression all over again because the voting act is state level. That means each state is responsible for how their people in their district vote. So the people of Louisiana will have to now go by the way Louisiana chooses to handle the way they vote.
So what would be the negative aspect for?
They're not going to let them vote.
Okay.
The
So
reason Southerners, the reason Section 2 was put into the Civil Rights Act for Southerners to vote was for Black people to vote. That's who was always affected prior to the Civil Rights Act. In Philadelphia and New York, Black people really wasn't going through that. They was having voter suppression, but they were still allowed to vote. Black Southerners wasn't allowed to vote. In
And
the South,
that's how we were able to own land, right? The men during
yes.
the early days. So if we were landowners, then we could vote, right? But if we weren't, then we couldn't vote in New York, in the North.
Yes, and that was prior to the when New York and Philadelphia and all the northern cities became very I can't find the word, but the North, after all of that happened, became very different from the South. But it's going to negatively affect the Black Southerners the most because of the fact that Section 2 was not one of the main factors, but it protected their right to vote in the so during the Civil Rights Movement in the Voters Right Act of 1965.
So I see a comment and it says from Pat from BK, New York FBA in the house. Ow. But it says southern states will lose 19 Democratic seats in southern states. That's correct if they remove Section 2?
Yeah,
They
they're
would
gonna
lose that, and then the House would fully be Republican because it's already
yeah.
fully Republican in those states, but they would lose the seats. And that section, what we have to worry about as Black Americans
Yeah,
is
that's what I want to know.
it's the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, right? In the Civil Rights Act. If anybody go poking around these acts, our antennas should always be up because those are the 3 amendments that protect us, and that is an act that protect our rights to vote. Once the Southerners lose their rights to vote, we all lose our rights to vote.
Yes, that why, and that was the. I ain't trying to overtalk,